So the 80s were a great time. Everything was way cooler looking, synths played in the background everywhere you went, and there was so much crack. But I want to zero in specifically on things being cooler looking, because that applied to wars in the 80s too, one of which being the 1989 invasion of Panama. Crack is also ironically a factor in this war starting, by the way. Tons of crack in the 80s. So we all know who Manuel Noriega is, because we're all males 18 to 35 who've played Call of Duty Black Ops 2 before, right? Well, just like the Scar in Fortnite, they made him in real life, and he was the de facto leader of Panama from 1983 to 1989. He was unelected and assumed this position after the death of Omar Torrijos, who overthrew the president of Panama in 1968 via a military coup. See, Omar made Noriega chief of military intelligence, which in turn made Manuel the CIA's goodest little informant, feeding US-backed forces in Latin America illicit weapons and military equipment. Fun fact, Noriega actually sued Activision for his portrayal in Black Ops 2. The case got dismissed in 2014 and he died a few years later. That's probably not a coincidence, but Noriega didn't sit in the good graces of the American intelligence agencies forever. He got pretty wrapped up in crack, and by crack I mean the illegal drug trade, which, you know, crack. But we all know the war on drugs was in full swing during this time, so we didn't really like that. Not to mention all the human rights abuses that were happening in Panama. Manuel was responsible for the murder of a man named Hugo Spadafora, who was a critic of Noriega and his regime. He joined the FRS, or the Sandino Revolutionary Front. No idea how that makes sense. And was openly not a big fan of the Panamanian dictator. So when he entered Panama in 1985, he was detained, tortured, and of course, murdered, or if you're on TikTok, unalived. There were some negotiations under Ronald Reagan, which sought Noriega's resignation, but they were ultimately unsuccessful with that. So when he annulled the 1989 general election results, which would have been won by an opposing candidate, President Bush ordered the reinforcement of the US Canal Zone. The PDF, or the Panamanian Defense Force, began setting up roadblocks in response, and after First Lieutenant Robert Paz, a Marine, was shot and killed at one of these roadblocks, Bush greenlit the operation Just Cause. Just cause.
People walking out of the building right now, getting in the vehicle, so we need to speed up the timeline if we can. We're going as fast as we can through.
Leading up to the invasion, the US had deployed approximately 16,000 troops to Panama alongside additional naval resources. The buildup aimed to increase pressure on Noriega. The US had also been conducting joint training and freedom of movement exercises in the area. Initially, the PDF were cautious and would prepare defenses when the training was conducted. However, they eventually stopped responding altogether, which primed the invasion of Panama perfectly for US forces. They got Pavloved for real. December 20th, 1989, at 12:46 a.m., 27,000 US troops and over 300 aircraft deployed against the PDF's vastly outnumbered and outgunned 16,000 personnel. Initially, military activities began with the aerial bombardment of key targets, including Panama City and military encampments nationwide. As bombs fell on Noriega's strongholds, communication lines shattered and panic spread amongst the PDF. Command and control centers were decimated, and the PDF struggled to coordinate any effective response as US forces secured air superiority. First targets on the chopping block were Punta Patia Airport and a PDF garrison in Rio Hatta, where Noriega actually had a home. Navy SEALs and Delta Force cooperated in order to take on the airport. The force consisted of 52 operators, 48 of which being SEALs, and they were tasked with destroying Noriega's private jet. So they landed south of the airport just before the initial combat operations began, while recon teams on the north side provided real-time intel on enemy movement. The SEALs began advancing up the airfield and taking positions when they received word that the PDF were dispatching armored cars to their position. So they attempted to move into ambush positions alongside the road, but as soon as they stood up to move, the PDF who were already stationed at the airport opened up fire. This killed 2 and injured 5 SEALs. A few more platoons moved in to engage the PDF and support the SEALs in order to secure the area, but an additional 2 were killed during this time. Overall, the airport was secured within minutes, but the casualties were much more numerous than expected. Now, the original plan was to disable Noriega's jet with minimal damage, shooting out tires and cutting control wires and all that jazz. So naturally, the SEALs decided to shoot it with an AT-4 anti-tank rocket. This engagement is still pretty widely seen by the SEAL community as a pretty lackluster and embarrassing moment in their history. It's kind of chalked up to inconsistent planning and poor command and control elements. But damn, that AT-4 was definitely the sledgehammer on the neck approach, and I like that. Other command centers in the country were also hit, like the assault on the La Comandancia, the central HQ for the PDF, led by the 508th Airborne. During the assault, there was a little operation led by Delta Force operators called Operation Acid Gambit. Fucking Operation Sandwich. I really like this operation. It's like a real life movie event. So the goal was to rescue Kurt Muse, an American expatriate from the notorious Carcel Modelo prison. Kurt had been arrested and subsequently tortured after he facilitated an anti-Noriega radio broadcast, and they got his ass. They were originally given the order to guard him at the prison, and if there was an American invasion, they were meant to execute him. But for whatever reason, they didn't. So Delta operators were inserted onto the prison roof via MH-6 Little Bird helicopters, where they breached the rooftop door, made their way into the depths of the prison, eliminated the guard that was watching Muse, and who was supposed to execute him. And because small arms didn't work on the locks, they used explosives to blow open Kurt's cell. They gave him some body armor, a helmet, and some iPro and rushed him back to the roof. Of course, guards had been alerted by this point, so as they escaped via the Little Bird, they just started to take on tremendous amounts of small arms fire. And they were kind of weaving in between the buildings and everything, but the helicopter did crash into the street. Kurt and the operator he was with leapt out, and the operator was hit in the head by the mangled but still spinning rotor of the MH-6 Little Bird. But that dude is a badass and got back up after that and asked Kurt if he was okay, where they then proceeded to an armored vehicle that successfully removed them from the pursuing enemy PDF force. As you've probably put together, fighting in Panama City was pretty intense, with US forces engaging in close quarters combat against entrenched PDF troops. But major confrontations occurred in the neighborhoods of El Chorrillo and Corundu. Some real house-to-house shit went down. I would know, I was there. El Chorrillo was a densely populated and poor neighborhood in Panama City, pretty much in the center of it all. It was also known for housing a lot of loyalty towards Noriega, which led to a pretty heavy presence of PDF troops. This meant it was absolutely essential for US forces to secure in order to establish control over Panama City. So upon entering El Chorrillo, US forces faced immediate resistance from PDF soldiers, who were totally just entrenched in various buildings all around the place. And so as US troops began infantry operations, PDF snipers started firing from rooftops and windows, which complicated their advance. But US forces continued their house-to-house combat, navigating tight and crowded streets. But the PDF's guerrilla tactics and knowledge of the terrain made things a little tricky for them. So each street corner pretty much became a flashpoint, and each building a potential ambush. It's all really tedious stuff. But the game changer for not only this specific battle, but for the entire conflict was the United States' total air superiority. Like, US troops are the best in the world, let's be honest. But airspace domination is what makes this conflict like a hydrogen bomb versus a coughing baby meme. Helicopters and fixed-wing aircraft provided close air support to the troops on the ground, targeting PDF strongholds. But the civilian population made minimizing civilian losses pretty difficult, and so that was a big point of contention in this whole thing. Ultimately, the battle lasted 2 days with an inevitable victory for the United States, of course, but a pretty less than stellar number of civilian casualties. I think it was around 300 civilian deaths due to the heavy fighting and crossfire and all that. But we're not here to talk about the political and socioeconomic impact of war crimes, though. We're here to talk about how cool the guys doing it look. So with El Chorrillo temporarily secured, U.S. forces turned their attention to Corundu. The neighborhoods that laid nearby braced for impact as U.S. soldiers moved to assert control over the next district. PDF forces, though weakened, were not willing to retreat quietly. The combat escalated as U.S. troops kicked down more doors and searched for lingering PDF fighters. They pressed forward, and after 2 days of intense skirmishes, the PDF's resistance crumbled like a Nature Valley bar. Oh, god damn it, you fucking cats. Mind you, they're also looking for Noriega at this time. As the dust settled, the gunfire faded, and the smoke cleared from the streets of Panama City, they still hadn't found Noriega. The Panamanian Walter White, now a hunted fugitive, had taken refuge in the
Papal Nunciature,
the diplomatic mission of the Vatican. Believing the sanctity of the site would protect him from U.S. forces. Wrong! The date was December 20th, 1989, and the atmosphere was charged as United States armed forces surrounded the
Papal
compound. Inside, Noriega was not just hiding, he was weighing his options and strategizing a way to escape America's eagle talons of justice. Meanwhile, outside, U.S. troops set up a blockade, sealing off any possibility of his escape. With the sun setting, the U.S. initiated what would become a drawn-out standoff. Tensions escalated as loudspeakers were deployed to transmit loud, unwelcome tunes and noises intended to unsettle and annoy the dictator. Kind of like the whole Vietnam, like playing like rabbits being slaughtered and all that, you know? They played relentless rock anthems and Trojan hits, showcasing a psychological tactic designed to wear down Noriega's resolve. The sound just thundered through the streets as well and into the ears of citizens, so you know they probably didn't like that. Who cares? Days turned into nights, and as the siege stretched on, the challenges intensified. Messages would be passed through intermediaries, suggesting that Noriega would not surrender easily. His defenders inside were emboldened by their belief in the diplomatic status of the mission, encouraging him to wait out the U.S. military presence. Adding to that pressure was the need for a resolution immediately. The United States government, of course, viewed Noriega's refusal to surrender as a direct challenge, like an affront and a total disrespect to them. It was complicating their mission of restoring democracy to Panama. But by January 2nd, 1990, after more than 2 weeks of the siege, frustration mounted on both sides. The music played on, but desperation began to creep in, and understandably so, because that would suck. Finally, on January 3rd, 1990, a weary and cornered Noriega made a fateful decision early that morning. He slipped out from the shadows of his sanctuary and approached a United States military officer stationed outside the Papal compound. Esto en us espanto, which Google Translate tells me says, "This is scary." Noriega had declared his surrender. Another victory in the books of American imperialism, baby. Pretty cool that the whole Panama thing is relevant now too, with there being talks of a second Panama invasion. I'll be signing up for that, so I hope to see you guys there. But if you enjoyed the video, remember to like and subscribe, and comment down below what you think about the drip in the 1989 Panama invasion and why it was objectively the best military drip you've ever seen in your life. Woodland supremacy, forever and always.